news with the NBA, and it kind of went under the radar. I saw some people talking about it on Twitter today. Was they're looking to potentially change the defensive rules because the thought is right now the NBA is way too offense heavy, and they're looking to potentially change the rules to make defense more of an impact, and they're trying to slow down the scoring. What do you guys think? Like, what is there any specific rules you would bring back? Any specific rules you would change? Do you think they should do anything? What do you guys think?
I don't really look to the rules. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Steph Curry. I think in 2016, when he really came around, I think that's what changed the game. And I think it's not due to a lack of defense now where it's too offensively sided. I think offense just runs differently now. I think people are putting up more threes per game. People are just looking to shoot at a higher caliber percentage. They're not really pushing in to drive the hoop. I think the game's just changing, and I think there's not really much you can do to combat that.
I agree, and I think people or athletes in general are getting much better at their sports, and they're adapting way faster to whichever league they're in, especially in the NBA, than they would be a couple years ago. If that athletes are starting to train younger, get better, they're faster, they're more athletic, but and as everyone loves offense and high scoring games, some of the fouls are ridiculous and calls and when you're a fan and you're watching, you're like, really, you're going to call that one, but not this one. You let that slide, not let that slide. It gets really inconsistent with the reffing where you need to figure out a way for defense to keep games competitive, but also have that high scoring and high offensive efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
well,
was, I think,
yeah.
go ahead, Paul.
My whole thing is this. I think it's actually a problem, and I think the NBA should make some changes because to me, you look at there's certain statistics that are available out there. You see, and I'm going to read some. The current average offensive efficiency rating is 115.4, which is an all-time record. So this is the best offenses ever. Like, just for an example, the 73 win Warriors were 113.5. Kobe and Shaq cracked 110 once. So I don't know if I could say
They were
that these
also
guys are
playing.
so much better. I would just say that players now are taking more shots. It's a faster paced game.
Yeah.
The statistics back that up, that it's faster paced. They're taking double or triple the amount of threes that they used to take, and the
How
percentages
do
have
you
remained the
stop that?
same. Well,
How do you stop that?
and I think because a lot of people are saying, oh, maybe they should get rid of the defensive 3 seconds rule, and I like that personally because I think the idea of the center having to leave the paint is kind of stupid. But at the same time, if you're trying to prevent teams from taking threes, that's only going to make them
It's not
take
gonna
more
happen.
threes. So
Exactly.
and again, teams that would have a
I, th-
stretch five, that would be huge for them. So that really encourages 3 point shooting. So
I think it's more of a the player attitude change of wanting to play defense. You can tell that there are some guys in the league that are like, you got by me. I'll let someone else handle it.
yeah,
Or they don't take pride in playing defense, and that should be an athlete or an NBA Players Association problem to discuss where you should try and not just wait around the 3 point line, not crash the boards. Like you see that more in college basketball because kids are trying to get to the NBA. There's more hustle and heart on defense in college, I think, and it just shows that just comes down to players and their whole
I
mentality
agree
for that.
to I agree to a certain extent with that. I think there definitely are some guys who aren't playing defense to the level that they could and the level that they should be held to, especially being in the NBA. However, if you look at this just from a numbers and mathematical standpoint, if you're shooting 50% just from the field in general, and 70% of those are layups, dunks, anything inside the 3 point line. That's how, I don't know if it was to that extent, but that's how the game used to kind of be run. You're going to score less points than if you're now shooting 70% of those shots are now threes. Like, it's just
And
figuring out
more,
how to kind of stop people from shooting threes. And I don't think you can really do that.
you just have to play. You have to have a higher aggressive outside 3 point defense. That comes down to coaching and players wanting to take a step and not being embarrassed, I think, not ending up on SportsCenter's top 10 list, cracking an ankle. Like, you're making 50 million. It doesn't really matter what it does. It shouldn't, at least. But
Bring
like you
back
said,
hand checking. Bring
yeah,
back the
That's the
hand
rule.
check.
I was just gonna say that because
hand
to
checking
me,
would
if
be
you
nice.
want to slow down the amount of 3-pointers that people can get off, because obviously back in the day they only really took wide open threes. You didn't see guys taking
Exactly.
contested
Yeah.
threes.
The
The
problem,
contested shots came from the mid range, and they don't.
Yep.
Nobody takes mid range jump shots anymore.
if they do bring back hand checking, though, they have. Did they get away with, like, the KD, like, swoop? Like, if a defender went through a steal and you ripped through and went up for a shot, like, technically you
Mm.
hit his hand as a follow through.
That's
That was a
considered a
foul.
shooting foul.
Yeah.
So if they bring back hand checking, you might there might be more of that BS foul. I think you would have to. I don't know. You would have to
Well,
do something about that. I think more players would take advantage of that. But
I don't think the problem's really around the rim right now. It's just the quantity of shots people are getting up now from range, and I think hand checking is really the only thing you can look to maybe slow that down. There's nothing else that you can really re-implement or add to the game to take away from that.
Yeah, because it really comes down to the evolution of the game. You have, innovative offenses like Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni's Suns, where they're trying to score in 7 seconds or less. Then you
Yep.
have, the Warriors, but Warriors was more about a personnel type of thing. But you start having teams. A good example, a very innovative team was the 2013 Knicks. It was the year Mike Woodson had taken over, and their thing, and this is really they were the first team to do this. They broke the NBA record for threes made in a season at that time. Now they would be a horrible 3-point shooting team in the league now in terms of threes made. But at that time, what they did was they moved Carmelo Anthony to the power forward, and he was their starting power forward that whole season, where he was always a small forward. So it became more about stretching the floor, getting 4 shooters out there at once. Now everybody does that. There's no more,
Yep.
The Dennis Rodmans of the world. Like, those guys
they don't
don't
exist.
exist anymore. Those guys are
last
now
one's Draymond
centers
Green.
or out of the league.
The last one's
Arguably,
Draymond
yeah.
Green, and he's almost out of the league.
Yeah.
Well, Draymond's
Well,
the exception to the rule because Draymond is a phenomenal playmaker and he's a phenomenal defender.
Yeah,
When
he
he
just
was
doesn't have-
good, when he was in his prime, he was a good shooter. He was not like a great shooter, but he was okay.
Yeah, I mean, he was averaging 23 at Michigan State before he came in, so he did what he needed to do. But you're not going to see a guy like that anymore, especially coming from college, or they're not even coming from college anymore. It's the G League or overseas. I don't think there's one projected lottery pick coming from the NCAA this year. Those guys are going to want to come in, get the ball, and start firing, and then you're not going to see a scrappy, low player come right in and make an impact anymore. It's just not going to happen.
Well, Paul, you bring up stretching the floor, and I think that kind of just adds to the fact that there's just a lot of intangibles that you can't really control to mitigate what's going on with the offense.
Yeah.
Now, instead of typically what you've seen in years past of 3 out of 5 guys on the floor being able to shoot the 3, now most teams have 5 guys out there that can pull a 3
Yeah, a lot
if
of
they're
teams
given
five
the
now.
opportunity. I'd say more than half the league probably has
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, I think it's out of the control of the NBA now. I think Steph Curry was the guy that innovated the game to the point where you're seeing this happen now. Like, I mean, Jake's saying that people are training earlier, they're training differently. And I think a lot of the kids growing up, when you're playing, you're trying to mimic your favorite players. I think everyone started shooting threes because of Steph Curry. And you're going to start seeing that generation come up. I think it's going to get even more out of hand.
Should have started with Jimmer, but that's a personal opinion.
I think
Jimmer flopped.
Jimmer was a flop. But I think
that's 'cause his
a lot of
attitude.
it comes down
Big
to
Yeah.
when it comes down to playoff basketball, things change a bit because those teams that just take threes, and they shoot a lot of threes, right?
It's a gamble.
Beautiful example was the late 2000s Rockets. They were the team, they looked at the analytics, they said the most efficient way for us to shoot is layups or 3-pointers. Mid-range jump shots are not efficient. They looked at all the stats and they just went by their stats, and what did it get them? The
Yep.
teams that win championships, let's take a look. You have in recent years, the 2019 Raptors, Kawhi Leonard is a mid-range shot creator. 2020 Lakers, LeBron, not a great shooter. Anthony Davis, horrible shooter. Not 2021 Bucks. Yes, you had Giannis with Brook Lopez being a stretch five, Chris Middleton being able to shoot. But at the end of the day, your best player wasn't this guy who's just pulling up and taking all these threes. When things slow down in the playoffs, you had to take the high percentage shots. Look at the Heat, their success in the playoffs recently. They've been making the finals, making the Eastern Conference Finals because Jimmy Butler takes high efficiency mid-range jump shots when it comes to the playoffs. Yep. Yes, you need to have other shooters out there to stretch the floor. It's a basic principle of the game. But the playoffs, you're always going to see lower scoring games. You're not going to see a playoff game where a team's scoring 135 points. Defense matters a lot in the playoffs because teams do step it up in the playoffs when it comes to defense. A lot of guys, again, we did say they're not really taking defense that seriously in the regular season. They step it up in the playoffs. Every possession matters.
I don't think that this is a playoff discussion. I think playoff basketball and regular season basketball are realistically two different things. Yes, everything you said applies, but this is more of a major problem in the regular season. Because playoff basketball, everyone's strictly playing to win, and playoff basketball is 10 times better than regular season basketball.
Mm-hmm. No, people play at a higher caliber, and
yeah,
I think, but all in all, I think this is a culmination of both sides of the spectrum here. I mean, if you're really trying to have this push of making the game a little bit more advantageous towards the defense, you have to take into account regular season as well as playoffs.
I agree.
Yeah. I agree with that. So, I mean, here's the thing, though. Personally, I think that they do need to do something because you can't have guys going out there. Right now, there's 50 players averaging 20 points a game. That's crazy. 2013, there was 9 guys that did that. So to me, I think they have to do something, and I think hand checking is a great start because hand checking just makes it more difficult to create your own shot, and it'll encourage teams to be more team basketball oriented, more cuts, setting off ball screens and stuff, and that's always more entertaining to watch. People don't want to see, a lot of people weren't a fan of the 2018 Rockets with James Harden isoing, putting you into pick and roll every time. People want to see cuts, passes, and they want to see all these things. So I think that would be a good start. I think it would make a big difference. I think it would also slow down the pace of play a little bit because guys aren't going to be able to move as quick on offense. I think it would be maybe they could try it out in the G League next year. See how it goes, how it impacts.
Not a bad idea.
That, and then maybe come 2026, they can consider making some changes, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
That's not a bad idea. Implementing it into the G League first. I think baseball did that rule.
Yeah.
Before in the minor leagues, so I like that. That's not a bad idea.
I'm always with it. I think just kind of use your farm system, the non-pros, as kind of your test dummies. I think there's no harm, no foul there.
And especially now
they're training to get into the league. They're not in the league. The games don't really matter as much as they do in the NBA. Right. So I think that's a good place to start.
And it'll get the guys better too.
Especially now that a lot of G Leaguers are potential picks too.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So they have that caliber. It's not like they're way far down at the bottom anymore.
Yeah.